Hello and good evening to all of you. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to develop AML safety risk model using Monte Carlo simulation to determine whether organization will pay fines and penalties because of their lapses in AML safety posture. Before we dive in, let's talk about risk and impact briefly. For example, if I say there is a 80% chance that fire will occur in my warehouse, then I am talking about risk. So risk is a probability or uncertainty about some unfortunate event happening in future. And now let's say the fire has occurred and I have lost 50% value of goods in that warehouse because of that fire. Now we are talking about loss situation or impact. So because of that risk, I have suffered 50% loss. So that's a distinction between risk and impact. Okay. Whenever there is a risk, there is a chances of impact. So in this case, the risk is AML safety risk and the impact is fines and penalties because of that AML safety risk. Now let's talk about Monte Carlo simulation. Monte Carlo simulation is a mathematical technique that allows you to understand the impact of risk and uncertainty in forecasting models. Imagine you have a situation where the outcome is uncertain because it depends on many different variables. Instead of trying to predict exactly what will happen, Monte Carlo simulation lets you see a range of possible outcomes and how likely each one is. For a simple example, let's say you are planning a outdoor picnic and you are worried about the weather. You know that there is a 30% chance of rain on any given day, but you cannot be sure whether it will be rain on the day of your picnic. If you were to use a Monte Carlo simulation, you could simulate the day of the picnic hundred or thousands of times using the 30% chance of rain. Each time, the simulation randomly decides if it will rain or not based on that 30% probability. After running many simulations, you might find that it rains in 300 out of 1000 simulation, which reinforces the 30% chance. You also see that in 700 simulation it does not rain. So you can estimate that there is a 70% chance of having good weather for your picnic. For Monte Carlo simulation, you have to understand few key points. First one is random sampling. Monte Carlo simulation uses random sampling to explore the range of possible outcomes. Multiple simulation. It repeats the process many times to see the variety of result. And the final one is probability. The result give you the idea of how likely different outcomes are. Now let's look at our model. Okay. So here I have taken 5 variables. Okay. Compliance level, regulatory scrutiny, audit effectiveness, historical fine data, penalty, severity. So let's talk about what each of these variables mean. So compliance level shows the percentage of compliance with AML safety regulation. Regulatory scrutiny, so it is a intensity of regulatory oversight. Internal audit effectiveness, it is the effectiveness of internal audits in detecting and mitigating compliance issues or AML safety issues. Historical fine data is a historical data on fines paid by the institution or similar institution. Regulatory penalty severity, meaning the likelihood and severity of fines if non-compliance is detected. Okay. And another thing that you need to understand is this fine probability formula. As you can see, here it is given as 1 minus compliance level into regulatory scrutiny into 1 minus audit effectiveness. So your fine probability will decrease if your organization compliance level is high, regulatory scrutiny is low, and audit effectiveness is high. Okay, this makes sense, right? And the another is fine amount. So here we are calculating the exact amount of the fine that organization will pay, right? So here I am using two scenarios. Okay, in first scenario we are assuming that the organization has a high compliance level, low regulatory scrutiny, meaning that the regulators are not effective, or regulators don't monitor the organization properly. Audit effectiveness is high, meaning that your internal audit team is capable enough to detect any AML safety issues. Historical fine data and penalty severity data. We are not making any changes in this data, right? I have developed another scenario where the compliance level of the organization is quite low, around 40% only. The regulatory scrutiny is high, almost 80%, meaning the regulators are very effective, and their tolerance level is zero, meaning that they will fine organization if they found any lapses in AML safety. And audit effectiveness is also low, meaning that your internal audit, let's say that internal audit team in that organization is not that capable enough to detect any AML safety issues. So historical fine data and penalty severity is same. So let's first run this scenario. Okay, so here we are assuming that compliance level is high, right? Okay, so let's calculate this fine probability and fine amount. Okay, see, this figure shows the distribution of estimated fine amounts, or how much fine amount that the organization is likely to incur, right? So it is above 100,000, right? uh, and the frequency is also high. I forget to mention this point. So iteration is 10,000, meaning we are creating around 10,000 scenario. So let's say around maybe it is around 9,000 scenarios. It is saying that there is a chances that we are going to pay fine around or above 1,000. So the amount here I have taken is in Nepalese rupees. Okay, but whatever the amount, the fine, when your organization is imposed with fine, that is a severe issue. Okay, so now let's look at our second chart. So it shows the probability of incurring fine, right? So please understand that we have run about 10,000 simulation, right? So in some simulation we have a zero probability that we will not, that our organization will not incur any fine, and also for the rest the probability is quite low, right? And the frequency is I mean, like, although there is some probability, the frequency is very low. So it shows that the chances of levying fine in that organization is quite low. Okay, this chart is quite simple. It says that as your compliance level increases, the fine probability of fine also decreases. Okay, now the final one. Okay, so see, this figure shows how much amount of fine that organization is likely to pay, right? So again, the probability is concentrated. Probability is 1, and the fine probability of fine will be below 2,000 2 lakh Nepalese rupees, right? So below 2 lakh rupees, there is a probability that organization may have to pay fine. Okay, so this is equivalent to this figure, right? So here we can see the fine amount is also below 200,000, right? So finally, let's look at the summary. So it shows that and this result is after aggregating the result of all those scenarios. So this says that probability of incurring fine by this organization is around 10%, and the total amount is around 8,000 rupees. Okay, so this is quite low amount, and the probability is also very low, right? So we can say that this is a residual risk, and it might be just below the risk appetite of any organization. Now let's run another scenario where we have assumed that compliance level is very low, right? So let me run this scenario. I will also recalculate this formula. Let's see what happens to the our findings, right? So this was the previous figure was this, right? Now when you rerun this figure, now we see the drastic result, right? The fine is about 5,000 Nepalese rupees, and the frequency is also high, right? Now let's look at another figure. Okay, so this was previous this figure was this figure shows previous scenario. Now let's look at what happens in our current scenario. Now as you can see, the probability, although the probability is around like similar to the previous one, around 60%, but the likelihood has increased. That means frequency has increased, meaning that there is a high probability that organization will have to pay fine. Okay, so I don't think there will be any much changes in this figure, because it again represent the same thing. Okay, so as your compliance level increases, the fine amount will decreases, right? Now let's look at this figure. Okay, okay, this was the figure from our previous scenario. Now let's rerun this figure. See, as you can see, the probability amount has increased, the fine amount has increased up to $500,000, right? Sorry, 500,000 Nepalese rupees, and the probability is around 100%. So previously it was around it was below 200,000. Now it has increased. Now let's look at our summary result. As you can see, the probability of incurring fine is 60%. Okay, which is very quite high, and the amount is around 100,000, right, Nepalese rupees. So what does this mean is that when your organization is has a low compliance level, when there is a high regulatory scrutiny, and your internal audit let's say is not effective, then there is a high chances that organization will pay fine. So in this way we can create a AML safety risk model, and you can use other variables also. Let's say KYC not update, enhanced due diligence not done, number of STR, right? So in this way you can use various risk indicator to determine whether your organization will pay fines or not, based on those key risk indicators, right? That's it for this video. I hope you have found this video useful and educational. And if you are in need of any kind of AML safety services, then please contact Shiori Consultancy. The details will be given in the description section below. Finally, if you have found this video useful, then please like, share, and subscribe this channel. Thank you for your time, and have a good day.